Because projects are temporary endeavors, they must first be initiated. We have to kick off the project. Then we have to plan the project to determine what we're doing and how we're going to do it. We have to execute the project, which is carrying out our project plan. Then we monitor and control the project to make sure that things are going according to the plan. And lastly, when all the work's done, we have to close out the project. These are called the 5 process groups. And if you look at a project timeline from start to finish, notice that the process groups don't happen in blocks of time. They actually happen all throughout the project. For example, if you look at the solid black line there, the planning process group actually occurs all throughout the project. In other words, you plan a lot of things at the beginning of the project, but you still have to revisit your plan and replan things throughout the project as things happen. So on any given day, a project manager might be planning something, executing other items, and then monitoring, controlling yet other things. So that's your job as a project manager, is to make sure that all of that happens and that we're able to get from start to finish and accomplish all of the work on time and on budget and meet a business need. So let's look at the different process groups individually. Initiating consists of 2 key actions. First of all is creating the project charter. This is the guiding document of the project. It should identify all the high-level objectives and any constraints, such as a budgetary limit or a deadline. Once the project charter is approved by the project sponsor, the project charter ideally should not change. It should remain constant throughout the project. Project manager also has to identify all the stakeholders during initiating, which means knowing all the people that are going to help accomplish the work, who could be impacted by the project work, and who might even perceive that they're impacted by the project work. We need to know all of the players. So when we plan the project, we need to realize that most project management plans will contain a lot of sub-plans or subsidiary plans for things like, what are the requirements? How do we manage scope, schedule, cost? What are the quality standards? How are we going to maintain quality? What are all the resources that we need and how do we get them? What are all the communication requirements that we have? What risks do we need to plan for? What do we need to procure on the project, like resources and equipment and people? Who are all the stakeholders and how do we engage them and make sure they support our project goals? How are we going to manage change? We have to do change control because that will come up, and we need to have a consistent way of dealing with change on the project. Configuration is making sure that everyone is on the same sheet of music when we're looking at things like our project documents. For example, if you change the project schedule at some point in the project, you would need to make sure that everyone on the project realizes the document's been changed and everybody's looking at the new version of the schedule. Compliance is making sure that all of our project resources and processes are in compliance with, for example, federal and state and local laws, company policies, and so we need to make sure that we're always meeting those legal requirements. Every project management plan should contain 3 baselines. Now, baseline means that we're going to measure project performance against this baseline. So there are scope baseline, schedule baseline, and cost baseline. The scope baseline is where we document all the work that we have to do on the project. The schedule baseline contains due dates, milestones, and any activity start and finish dates. And the cost baseline is our approved spending plan, which is time phased according to the schedule, meaning when do we need to buy certain things on the project? When do we need to spend money for certain things? So it's our spending plan. Baselines are going to be referenced by the project manager all throughout the project in order to measure performance. If I know that I have a deadline to meet by a certain day on the calendar, I'm going to measure performance. Does it look like we're going to actually be done by that date? And did we make that date? So once you've got a good plan for how you're going to do everything on the project, you need to execute that plan. And that involves these 4 basic things. We have to acquire all the resources we need and assign them to their job tasks. We need to build out the project team so that they work cohesively together to get the work done. And carrying out the work, doing all the work that's in the project management plan, and also engaging with stakeholders, which means we're always working with people and trying to gain and maintain their support for our project. While the executing of the project is going on, the project manager also needs to do monitoring and controlling, which means I'm looking at what is the plan and what's actually happening, and is there any variance between the plan and actual. So first of all, we have to measure actual performance. You need to know how much money we're spending. We need to know what work has been completed and so forth. Then we compare what we plan to do to what's actually happening. And if there's any variances, we adjust our plan or how we're executing to the project plan as needed. And it's also about managing project change, that we need to make sure that as change occurs, as it gets approved, that the project stays on track to achieve the high-level project goals. Once all the project work is done, we need to close the project. And that involves several things. First of all, we need to transition the deliverables over to our customer or maybe to operations. For example, if we built a building for a client, we're going to give them the keys to the building and all the ownership paperwork. We've got to transition the ownership over to that new that customer to own that. We have to finish all of our administrative tasks. There's a lot of paperwork, maybe some legal documentation that has to be done, paperwork that has to be submitted to your billing office, your legal office, your senior management, and all has to be closed out. Then we want to make sure that we have a good record of everything that happened on the project. So we archive all of our project documentation and our lessons learned. And of course, the lessons learned is just what happened on this project, what do we do right and wrong, and what will we do differently on the next project. We want to survey stakeholder satisfaction to know how people feel about the project outcomes. We may have met our scope, schedule, cost baselines and also met a business need, but sometimes we want to make sure that stakeholders feel good about this project. That's important to learn moving forward to new projects. We need to release our resources. We don't need the equipment, the materials, and all the team members anymore because the project is over. So we need to release them and help them get to where they belong to work on their next project. We want to measure project success. So we want to compare all the project outcomes all the way back to the high-level objectives in the project charter and make sure we met those. How close did we come to meeting the project objectives in the charter? And lastly, we need to prepare and deliver a final report. And this usually would be the project manager briefing senior management or the client on all of the outcomes for the project. How do we do in all the different areas of scope, schedule, cost, quality, risk, resources? And we basically want to review that with all of those senior people so that they know what happened and we can learn from it as we move into other projects. So project managers must integrate all of this across the entire project, which means that you have to pay attention to all of this and make sure it all happens every day effectively and efficiently and consistently all throughout the entire project.